Hi Brandy, this is George Sherritt. I just finished doing your home inspection and I thought I'd create a little video review for you. That's a picture of the front of the house that I take to just put on my cover my report. I've got glare, there we go. The front porch deck would benefit from having some kind of stain put on it to treat the wood and just to make it look nicer. There's a couple boards that have wood rot in them. I didn't notice it till I've been here a little bit, so we'll get to that picture shortly. There's no gutters on the house, and so water will pour off the roof and potentially splash up onto the siding, so I'd recommend gutters be installed on the house. That electrical outlet, that was just a picture for me to remind me to go back and test it, which I did, and it was fine. It's GFCI protected like it should be. There's two structures like this. One's a patio structure and one's a carport. I see them a lot, especially in rural areas like this where they're not built to any kind of building codes or modern standards. The rafters are usually over-supported or overspanned rather. This one, the rafters are overspanned, and also there's some wood rot in the structure here and there. So I'd recommend you have a contractor look at it with the idea of making repairs. This rafter here you can see is pretty rotted. On the back part of the house where the shingles are obviously newer, someone has re-shingled, but they didn't do it correctly. Usually you want triple coverage so that you would use really long shingles and they would come up, all the way up behind this one. And in this case, they only come up to about here. And you can see what's back behind here is the building paper. So rain could potentially get in here and get behind the siding and lead to wood rot damage or an invitation for carpenter ants because they like wet wood. So I've pulled one out there and you can see the building paper back here. So unfortunately, someone should probably take that siding off and redo it because I can't think of any easy way to fix it. They have not caulked around like windows and where trim meets windows and trim meets trim. So that's another area water could potentially get in. They hadn't quite finished the siding here, so the OSB is exposed to the weather. It's darkened, but I don't think it's actually rotten or damaged to the point it has to be replaced. It just should be covered up. OSB is not rated to be out in the weather. Kind of more examples of the same thing. The shingles are just too short. You could say the shingles are too short or the courses are too big, but it has the same effect. There's a light fixture missing on that right wall of the house. There's some blackberries up against the siding. It's good to keep the vegetation trimmed back. It holds water against the siding and it's a physical pathway for things like carpenter ants. That's another example of not having gutters at the gutter edge here, at the eave edge. This is the carport out front. You can see there's wood rot in this rafter here. It's pretty compromised. They're also overspanned. So have a licensed contractor look at this with the idea of making it more structurally secure and replacing all the rotten wood. There's several cracks in the CMU foundation. CMU is concrete masonry unit. Some of them have been epoxied or caulked. These probably happened a long time ago. I recommend they be grouted or caulked like this so that establishes a baseline for you, and that way you know if there's any movement or not. Likely, like I said, this happened a long time ago. If you do seal these and you see that there is movement, then you want to call an engineer and have them come up with a solution for that, which would usually be some sort of strapping, metal strapping that would be anchored to both sides. I did see a little line of carpenter ants coming into the structure here. They were coming up this post and across, and you can see right across here there's 5 or 6 carpenter ants. So I'd recommend you have a licensed pest applicator come out with the idea of treating for the carpenter ants. There they are. So when they're in a row like that and they're, a bunch of them are marching, they either are trying to establish or have established a satellite colony. They probably have a colony like in a rotten log or a rotten tree stump nearby, and then they're trying to establish a separate colony here. So they're pretty easy to get rid of and it's not expensive. Probably less than $200. The roof has a lot of moss on it. This is a lower slope roof at the back of the house I was able to walk on pretty easily. You can see it needs to be cleaned, so I'd recommend it be cleaned. Don't let anyone pressure wash it, that can damage the roof. This is the roof over the patio structure I can't see it at all because it's totally covered with leaves, so I'd recommend it be cleaned and then have it inspected either by me or have a contractor look at it just to make sure it doesn't need any repairs. This is on the main house roof. It also has a lot of moss and should be cleaned. The dormers up there, let me get a little close up. So this is called roof-to-wall flashing, and the flashing is supposed to go up behind the siding, so ideally the siding should have been cut at a bevel like that, and the siding and the flashing go up behind it. Water will hit the siding here and run down and get behind the flashing, and then it's inside the structure, so have a licensed contractor fix that. One way I see done, it's not technically correct, but it would be an improvement, is people will load this up with caulking and then nail a board to it. It's better than it being open like this, but it's still not technically correct. That's what they've done here. So this is an improvement over what we were just looking at, but ideally it should go up behind the siding. And then I scampered up the steep roof here to about this point, and I didn't want to, if I fell here, I knew I'd come down and land on this low slope roof. Going further out this way, it would be a 2-story fall, so I don't do that. So I looked at the rest of the roof from the ground with binoculars. I didn't see any missing shingles or any badly damaged shingles, but it does really need to be cleaned. It's a 30-year architectural laminate roof. I'm guessing is around 20 years old, so, and you usually don't get a full lifespan out of a roof, so it's getting near the end of its serviceable life. It's pretty worn in places. The dormers have a rolled roofing product, and I could see it's not well sealed at the edges here. So have a licensed roofer get up there and look at that and evaluate it and repair it as needed. There's a similar dormer roof over the bathroom on the second floor, and in one of these areas I saw there had been water stains on the ceiling. So these have the potential to leak, and some of them I think are leaking. Same thing there. There's peeling paint on the trim in several places. Same thing here. So this is probably from a pressure washer. Someone got the tip too close and took away the aggregate here. I saw several of those. These are areas where it's worn. We're looking at the black tar and fiberglass underneath the granules because the granules have been removed. This is above that bathroom I mentioned on the second floor, and you can see these little bubbles here, so rain can potentially get under there. So have a licensed roofer fix that. More worn shingles. The paint's peeling on the trim here. Same thing up there, not painted in places. The stairs on the side of the house are in contact with the dirt, so anytime you stick wood in the dirt, it's going to shorten its life. So where practical, it's good to remove the dirt away from the wood. This is a skirting, and I think it's probably designed to keep animals out, so that's why it's in the dirt. I would leave that alone. I came back with my tester and hit the test button on the lower one, and it's connected to a GFCI breaker in the panel. This is the one right off the back porch, and it's not GFCI protected, so I'd recommend that be done. There's some termite damage inside the structure. This is the entrance to the sub-crawl space in the basement. So again, have the exterminator look at this and determine if it should be treated or not. There was a lot of stuff in the basement, so it made it hard for me to see everything, and I just take a couple pictures to document that. There was water on the floor in one corner of the basement, and Mike reported to me that there'd been a leak at the main water supply valve, and it had been repaired. And this was all, obviously the wrenches are sitting here, and it's brand new. The valve in this section of pipe's brand new, so that makes sense why there's water on the floor. There's the valve, still got its tag on it. The water heater is pretty old. I'll have to blow that up when I get home. Well, there we can see a date. It's at least from 1986, so that would be longer than most water heaters last. There's corrosion on the supply lines coming in, so have a plumber correct that. The temperature pressure release valve ideally should have an extension pipe put on it. Today's code says it has to go to the outside. That's hard to achieve in a basement, so if it just went down to the floor within a few inches of the floor, that would be much safer than this. When they open, steam and scalding hot water comes out. Doesn't happen very often, but that's why we have codes about where they should go. Those two dissimilar metals here, we've got galvanized pipe and copper pipe together, and that doesn't appear to be a dielectric union, so electrolysis is starting to happen here, so have a plumber fix that. That's the date on the water heater again. This is a clean out cap for the sewer line here, and the edge of it's damaged, so sewer gas could come up into the house there. It's not a health concern or anything, it just would smell bad. They do make a replacement cap that's kind of like a big rubber cork that you put in there and then tighten a nut and it expands, and that would seal that pretty well, I'm pretty sure. So this was the first outlet I tested. There's quite a few outlets in the house that are ungrounded. There's a mix. Mostly where the bathrooms are upstairs, they've run grounded circuits, and to the kitchen they've run grounded circuits, and they've left just some of the outlets, like on the exterior walls of the living space, ungrounded. That usually when someone updates an older house like this electrically, they replace the panels, which has been done here, and then they run dedicated circuits to the bathrooms and the kitchen, and often will leave the outlets that you might plug a lamp into or something ungrounded, because you have to tear into the plaster to run new wires, and that gets expensive. So it's fair to say the house has been electrically updated, but I just want you to know not every outlet is grounded. The shower in the basement is missing a shower head. Recommend one be installed. That's just a picture of the bathroom in general. There's an open electrical splice in the ceiling of the basement here. So splices should be in a box connected to the structure with a cover. That's kind of where it is. This is distinctive. In the basement there's only one beam with these metal rods like that. It's above the card, one of the cars down there. This is in the left front corner of the house. In my report, left, right, front, back is as if you're out in the street looking at the house. So this is the left front corner. There's a lot of carpenter ant frass here, which is like sawdust debris that the carpenter ants create. So have the pest exterminator look at this area as well. There's another crack in the foundation, so I'd recommend that be epoxied or grouted. Anytime there's electrical wire below 6 feet, it's recommended that it be in a conduit to protect it. It's in an area where it's subject to damage. So a bunch of outlets in the basement, they did not run conduit to. This outlet by the door to the basement is just free hanging, so it needs to be attached to the structure and ideally should have conduit. There's a lot of fluorescent lights attached to the ceiling down there, but it looks like they've been attached to the ceiling, but no one's ever really wired them up, so they're not functional. That should have conduit. These should have conduit. The filters inside the furnace were dirty, and there were no current service tags on the furnace, so I'd recommend it be serviced. I did run it, and it functioned fine. This is just a general picture of the kitchen sink for me. The sink faucet was turned off, and home inspectors generally, we don't turn things on because we don't know why they're turned off, and we don't want to make a mess and damage the floor coverings. So I'd recommend either that the sellers demonstrate that it works, or have the sellers get it working before you take possession. The drain from the dishwasher drains directly into the sink drain. We don't do that anymore. There's the potential to siphon dirty sink water back onto your clean dishes. Now we run this to what's called an air gap. It's a little chrome dome that sits to the right of the faucet often, and it's an anti-siphon device, so I'd recommend one of those be installed. The stove didn't have its anti-tipping device. This is handy because it's right here. It talks about it on this label right here, and the idea is if you had a pot of hot soup and someone put weight here, that the stove could tip up and slide the pot off onto that little person. So inexpensive piece of safety equipment I'd recommend. The stove vent has never been hooked up. They've got the hole up here in the cabinet, and it's blowing up through here, and they just haven't run a pipe up through here. So I'd recommend that be vented to the outside if possible. So these are some of the outlets in the living space I talked about that are ungrounded. There's a fireplace insert, has an electric blower fan. The interior looked in pretty good shape, the bricks were in decent shape, and the gasket on the door was in good shape. I would recommend, I can't see up here because of baffles, and I didn't access that part of the roof, so I couldn't look down the flue. I'd recommend you have it looked at with the idea of maybe having it cleaned. There's a couple areas in the house with old linoleum flooring. There's no way for me to know how old it is, but because of the age of the house, it certainly could be in that age bracket where it contains asbestos. It won't hurt anyone unless it becomes airborne, so really just leaving it the way it is relatively safe. If you didn't like it and wanted to remove it, then you probably should have it tested and find out if it's made of asbestos or not, and if it is, have it professionally remediated. Same thing with ceiling tiles. I don't have any way to know when they were installed, but potentially they could have asbestos as well, so it's not going to hurt anyone the way it is, but if you disturbed it, you would want to know if it contained asbestos and then treat it appropriately. This is just a general picture of the bathroom. This was the first floor hall bathroom. The toilet ran after it was flushed, and I jiggled the handle and it still ran, so it probably needs an adjustment or new guts on the inside. This is in the master bathroom, the shower stall. They're putting together a nice looking tile shower stall. They're using the appropriate products on the walls and everything. It just hasn't been finished yet. There's a window in the stairwell. Windows in stairwells, now are required to be tempered glass. Obviously it wasn't when the house was built, but it would improve the safety of the stairwell if this was switched over to tempered glass, so if someone fell, they wouldn't cut themselves badly in the window. This is the same kind of thing. The height of stair rails when the house was built, there probably was no code when this house was built. It's much lower than what is acceptable today. The reason being, this is a fulcrum point, so if you hit this from the side, you've got a lot more mass above the rail than below the rail, and you could fall over the rail. So it's an old house. I wouldn't do anything about it, but it's my job to tell you that it's not right or it's not safe, potentially. That's a shot for the same thing. The upper part of the stairs lacks a handrail, so always adding a handrail would improve the safety of the stairs. This was a sidewall attic on the second floor that I was able to put my head back in here and look around, but I couldn't actually physically get in there. I did see some signs of rodents in the attic, so again, a licensed pest control operator would treat for rodents. There's some more of that linoleum tile. This is in the bathroom on the second floor. This is one of the areas I talked about that had been leaking. I carry a moisture meter and probed this area, and it was bone dry. Of course, it's been dry here for a while as well, so I don't know if that's a current leak or not. I suspect it is, just because of the condition of the roofing I saw in that area with the edges not adhered well. So have a licensed roofer fix the roof and then have this patched. There was water on the floor too, so that tells me it's relatively recent. No one's bothered to clean the floor since the last time it dripped. There's no fan in that bathroom, so when possible, I always recommend a fan be installed to the outside. That bathroom sink, the faucets were turned off also. The stops below the faucet were turned off, so I'd recommend that that be corrected before you take possession. There were a couple other water stains in that bathroom on the ceiling. They were also dry today, so same recommendation. There were carbon monoxide alarms in the house, like the state law requires, 1 per floor. Smoke alarms were mostly in the hallways. Only a couple bedrooms had them. A couple did not have them, so I recommend 1 in every bedroom. The electric wall blower heaters were turned off at the breaker box in the basement. It's another situation, I don't know for sure why they're turned off, so I don't turn them on. But I would recommend it be verified that they function before you take possession. Some of the ungrounded outlets are obviously ungrounded because they're just 2-prong outlets. That's fine to me. This is a safer outlet than an ungrounded 3-prong outlet because it's sort of masquerading as something it's not. Everyone can look at this and see it's not grounded. Same thing here. Wall heater that's turned off. There's the carbon monoxide alarm for the first floor. These breakers are turned off and they're labeled, second floor heaters. So probably just a matter of turning them back on. There's a little bit of wood rot in the front deck on the stairs there. Have a contractor correct that. There were some electrical boxes in the upper attic that didn't have covers. you know, this isn't an area anyone's going to inhabit, but technically or ideally they should have covers over top of the electrical boxes. And then we're back out front. So after you've watched this and read through my report, if you have questions, feel free to pick up the phone and call me. Thank you.